Gordon Dalgleish here this morning, and delighted to have Ken Goodwin with me, the Secretary of Prestwick Golf Club in Scotland. Ken, welcome.
Thanks, Gordon. I'm looking forward to this in these sort of troubled times of coronavirus and whatever. Hopefully this is a bit of light relief.
Yes, that's the intention of it, and just kind of at the end of the day, hopefully people better understand Prestwick Golf Club, because I think it's one of these places that is unfortunately overlooked by too many people, and I'll kind of touch on that as we go through this. But anyway, Ken, you've been around golf for a long time. I believe you've been the secretary since 2010 at Prestwick. How did you end up A, playing golf and being around golf, and then B, turning it into a bit of a career?
Well, I come from a golfing family. My parents golfed, and grandfather and uncle golfed as well. So golf was always within the household. And, you know, I achieved a reasonable standard, nothing exceptional, but I played county golf for a number of years, played university golf in Scotland, which is quite different nowadays. Yep. I think it's a lot more along the American model. Trained to become a chartered accountant, which is the equivalent of a CPA in the States, but kept golfing away at the same time. And I always fancied finishing my career as a golf club secretary. And to be selfish, I had sort of a short list of 3 clubs that I quite fancied being the secretary of. Prestwick was one of them. And when I saw the job advertised at the end of 2010, I thought, well, I was back working for myself at that time. Why not? I'd originally intended maybe doing that in about 10 years' time, but I didn't know if this job would still be around then. And luckily, I went through the interview process, and they obviously saw something on me, and I've been there since the start of 2011 now, so this is year 10, and thoroughly enjoying it.
Well, fabulous. Well, I won't ask you who the other 2 were, but I know that Prestwick is certainly one of the very best, and it's got a storied history and traditions, and so I envy you and being able to enjoy all that brings with it. So, talk a little bit about Prestwick. It was founded in 1851, and it really does, as I mentioned at the beginning, I feel as though it's sadly overlooked by many people because it just doesn't get the same profile that open venue courses do today. We certainly see a significant uptick in inquiries for any golf course after the Open has been played there. But Prestwick does not enjoy that luxury. But the whole experience, the quality of the golf, how you play links golf, matches just about anything that's out there. So if you want to just kind of walk us through the history of Prestwick and until today. Okay,
well, I suppose even going back way a bit before I started here, I'd obviously experienced playing golf here when I was at university. And perhaps one of the reasons it was on my shortlist of places I would like to work was that we would play matches against the members who in those days used to try and get the students tremendously drunk over lunch, and we'll maybe come on to lunch later. But if you met those same members a year, 2 years later, they remembered you, and they remembered what you were doing in your career. And that actually sort of struck a chord with me, that they actually did take a genuine interest in other people. And when I started here, I was told, it's a very friendly club, a very welcoming club. And that's certainly the case. I mean, our members really do enjoy talking to visitors. And golf's such a small world that, there's maybe, you talk about 6 or 7 degrees of separation between people. In golf, I think it's about 2 or 3. You'll invariably meet someone that knows someone, and next thing you're best friends. But Prestwick Golf Club, as you say, it was formed in 1851. It's, I think, either the 23rd or 24th oldest club in the world. I'm always very careful in making any claims about that because golf clubs have a habit of finding scraps of paper that either prove or disprove different things. But certainly we were formed in 1851. Golf had been played on the land at Prestwick for a number of years before, but there hadn't been a properly laid out course. And in those days, the gentry, as it were, who were members of golf clubs, they were independently wealthy. They would hunt, fish, shoot, game, dine, golf, just basically enjoy themselves. And they would travel round from course to play in the various events. There wasn't a golf course at Prestwick, although the land had been used for golf. And so the driving force behind the Prestwick Golf Club was a man called James Ogilvie Fairley, who lived maybe about 5-6 miles away at a place called Coodham. And he was the captain of the R&A at one point. And quite often when he went to St Andrews to play, he would either have Tom Morris caddy for him, or he would partner Morris in matches against another caddy and a gent. And at the time, Tom Morris had a brief apprenticeship with Alan Robertson as a feathery ball maker. But Morris had played on the old course one day and his feathery ball had burst. And so the gent that he was playing with said, try one of these. And it was one of the new Gutta Percha balls. And Morris used that, presumably thought it was a tremendous ball. It was a lot more durable than the feathery. And it went further. And Alan Robertson found out about that. So there were words, and Morris found he was no longer an apprentice to Alan Robertson. So he really was without a job at the time. And James Ogilvie Fairley persuaded him to come to Prestwick to be the first keeper of the green and ball and club maker to the club, and to lay out the original 12-hole course. And the gents down this way who had been golfing, there was about 57 of them. They met regularly in the Red Lion Inn, which is a local hostelry, probably about 400 yards from the clubhouse here, still exists. And they met there and in July and agreed to form a club. And Morris was invited to come down and to lay out the golf course and be the first keeper of the green. You know, we don't call them keepers of the green now, they're sort of greenkeepers or course superintendents. And Morris's approach to golf course design was fairly basic. He didn't have lots of heavy earth-moving equipment to reshape fairways and whatever. Word is he had a wheelbarrow, a navvy, a workman, a couple of shovels, and that was it. And he went out, he would go out, he would stuff a pocket full of feathers, and he would go out and he'd look for a good place to have a green. And once he identified that, he would stick a feather into the ground, really just to remind them we're going to prepare a green there. Then he'd wander off again. He'd find another good place for a green. And he kept doing that, crisscrossing, just finding good places for greens. And then the greens were prepared, nothing like modern greens. You know, they would have a scythe. I don't think at that time they really even had push cutting machines that would cut the greens. And it was up to you as the golfer to go from one hole to the next. And if there happened to be a sand dune in the road, or a burn, or a big depression, you had to decide how you were going to negotiate that. You either went over it or round it. I think experience showed that with sand dunes, trying to go through them didn't really work particularly well. And that really was Tom Morris's approach to golf course design. He did discover fairly early on, apparently, that by putting sand down, it helped to improve the consistency and the quality of the grass on the greens. And his mantra was sond, sond, and mere sond. You may need to put subtitles in for that, but that was sand, sand, and more sand. And when he eventually went back to St Andrews, he continued that there in the way that he developed the old course. So that was how the club came about. You know, Tom Morris was persuaded to come down. He brought his two-month-old son, Tommy, with him and his wife. And, that was in 1851. And they were here until, I think it was 1864. They returned to St Andrews.
So one of the fascinating aspects of Prestwick is your lengthy association and always been at the forefront of the golf professional world, if you will. The Open was obviously the first professional event. You have enjoyed, in my lifetime, you've had by British standards, long tenured golf professionals. Frank Rainey, kind of the legendary long-term pro that any number of people you talk about, 2 or 3 degrees of separation. There's probably no more than 2 with Frank. And he was from the era where Ian Marshbank at Gleneagles and Bob Jameson at Turnberry, kind of before golf tourism really got up and running to what it is now. And, even kind of as a testament to the golf professionals, David Fleming, who's been with you for 10 plus years, is still referred to as the young pro, I believe. So, I mean, there has to be this remarkable ongoing kind of firm commitment to golf professionals by your membership. I mean, it started way back at the beginning.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've had 7 professionals in the club's history, starting with Tom Morris, who, as I say, went back to St Andrews in 1864. He was replaced by Charlie Hunter, who did a couple of years, and then he got lured away to Royal Blackheath for a while, and his place was taken by Andrew Strath, who sadly died. And so Charlie came back, I think it was in 1866, and he was here until well into the 20th century. So the club does have a history of looking after its staff. It's an enjoyable place to work. It's a great membership. So you do find that a number of members of staff have been here for a long, long time. I'm a new boy. I'm only in my 10th year here, so I've got a long way to go. I mean, Frank came here in 1962, and he was the pro until 2004 when he retired. I should say he's still a regular at the club, and holds court on a Wednesday afternoon and organises a group that go out and play. The number of holes they're playing nowadays are getting fewer, but Frank knows everyone and everyone knows Frank. And David has also been a great ambassador for the club. He's been here now. This is his 16th year at Prestwick.
Okay, 16 years, and he's still the young pro. But that just speaks volumes to the quality of the leadership and the inclusive nature of the club, for all that has been going on, and it's been a consistent theme through the years. The Open. So the on the same vein for professional golf, the Open in its day when it started was kind of an outlier. I mean, there weren't events for professionals. And so how did that kind of come into being, and why Prestwick?
Well, the Prestwick had tried to start an event a few years earlier, and had been unsuccessful. But at that time, Alan Robertson, the feathery ball maker at Wordsworth, Tom Morris, he was the best golfer of the time. This was in the 1850s we're talking about. He was the best golfer of the time. It's said that he never lost a money match playing his own ball. He never lost a money match with Tom Morris as his partner. He was the first golfer to shoot below 80 around the old course at St Andrews. So he was known as the champion golfer of Scotland. He was the best golfer of the time. And he died in 1859. So the big question then on everyone's lips was, who's the best golfer now? And I suppose in those days, if you were the champion golfer of Scotland, for all intents and purposes, you were the champion golfer of the world, because most of the golf was being played in Scotland. And so the members here, really more for their own entertainment than anything else, decided that after their autumn meeting, they would invite the best professionals or the best caddies of the time to come and play a match round the links at Prestwick. And so letters were sent out to, I think it was 11 other clubs, asking them to send their 2 best professional players who had to be known and respectable caddies. And there would be a challenge event. They would play 3 rounds of 12 holes. The course in those days was a 12-hole course of about, I think, just under 3,800 yards. And the winner would win a belt, a championship belt. And if you think the belts that are given out for boxing and the like, at that time it was starting to be used as a type of prize to recognise an achievement, was to give a belt. And so on the 17th of October 1860, 8 golfers took part in that first Open, and they played in pairs. They weren't regarded as being suitable to keep their own scores, so a gentleman was appointed to act as a marker to go round with each group and to mark their cards. And they started at noon. They played 2 rounds of 12 holes. They retired to the Red Lion Inn for lunch, came back and played another 12 holes. And that first Open, it was completed in 4.5 hours, including lunch. And it was won by Willie Park from Musselburgh, which was probably a bit of a slap in the face for the souls of Prestwick and St Andrews. I think felt they had a bit of superiority above Musselburgh being a mining community and whatever. But Willie Park, he came forward and he won, and he won the championship belt. Now, I've actually got a replica of the belt here, and I'll maybe just try and retrieve it for you to see. And for the various people watching, that is
perfect. Yep,
is what the belt was like. This is a replica, I should say. In 1985, to celebrate the 125th anniversary of that first Open, and then again in 2010, the club have had replica belts made, one for display in the clubhouse and one to present to the winner of the Open that year. So Sandy Lyle won in 1985 at Royal St George's, so he got a belt, and Louis Oosthuizen won in 2010 at St Andrews, so he got a belt. So we have those replicas. But that was the prize that the winner got in that first Open, and he could take the belt away with him if he wanted, as long as he left £25, which is what that belt originally cost. I think the concern that the club possibly had was that they might not see the belt again for the next year. And in those days too, a lot of the golf that was being played they were money matches rather than stroke play events. So in some ways, that first Open being a stroke play event was probably quite unusual for a lot of the professionals. You usually found that you would have a wealthy gent would have his man, his caddy, who he'd put up against someone else. You'd never think it would happen nowadays, but that was how it was. And if the golfer won, then his patron would pick up the winnings, and it's really at his whim what he actually gave to the player as his winnings. But if you were the holder of the belt, I think you would be able to probably negotiate a better share of your gent's winnings. So that first Open, no prize money. And in fact, it wasn't until 1863, I think it was, that prize money was introduced in the Open, and not for the winner. because he was getting the belt, so he would be getting his share of winnings from his gent going forward.
Yeah.
But the runner-up got £5, and third got £3, fourth got £2, and then the following year they finally introduced prize money for the winner, and that was the princely sum of £6.
And then if you won the belt for 3 consecutive years, you held on to the belt, which created some challenges.
That's right. When the belt was gifted to, or a group of members bought the belt, and when that was put forward as the prize, it was said if anyone wins 3 years in succession, the belt becomes their property. So in 1868 to 1870, young Tom Morris won the belt outright. Excuse me. It's interesting in those first sort of 7-8 years of the Open. Willie Park won it 3 times. Old Tom won it 4 times. Andrew Strath, who briefly was the professional here, won it. But then when young Tom came onto the scene, he was completely different by all accounts. He hit the ball a tremendous distance. He hit it about 200 yards, which when you think the distance now that players hit the ball, you think it's nothing. But good golfers, a good shot for a good golfer in those days was probably about 170, 180 yards, whereas Tommy knocked it 200 yards. It's said he also discovered backspin. I'm not sure whether that's actually true or not, by using a rut iron to make the ball spin. But he won in 1868. He was 17 years old. His father, Old Tom, had won the year before, aged 46. So Old Tom is still the oldest winner of the Open. He's not the oldest winner of a major. Nicholas was older when he won the Masters in 46. And Julius Boris won, I think it was the PGA, aged 48. But Old Tom is still the oldest winner of the Open. Now, if Tom Watson had only won the Open at Turnberry, then I would have been delighted to change my story. But, I recount that story to visitors. And so Old Tom was the oldest in 1867. Following year, Tommy won at age 17, and he is still the youngest winner of a major golfing championship. So that's really quite a unique double for father and son, being oldest one year and youngest the next. And then Tommy won again the next year. He won in 1869. He had the first recorded hole-in-one in the Open that year. And then he won the following year in 1870. And the first hole on the 12-hole course at Prestwick was 578 yards long. And Tommy started with a 3. And that's, we have a stone cairn which marks where that first tee would have been. And they play to what is now the 16th green. And when you stand beside the cairn, you can barely see the green in the distance. And for Tommy, with hickory clubs, a gutty ball to hole out in 3 was tremendous. He obviously holed a very long shot and probably had a following wind, but that doesn't take anything away from the achievement.
Even so, yeah. So jumping horses ever so slightly, one of the many unique aspects of Prestwick is that you've got this railway station and railway line beside the first tee. It runs alongside the first tee.
Yep.
Over the years, I've heard some kind of funny stories about that, people missing tee times in tournaments, and as the train didn't stop at that station. Any funny stories that you've heard, and the kind of the connection between the railway line and golfers?
Well, golf in Scotland, in fact, most of the UK developed along the railway lines. As the railways branched out from the major cities to the coast, back in the 1800s, then there was areas of land between the shore and the good arable land, which was of not much use, and that's where the sort of links land between the two, and that was where the golf courses developed. So that's why when you look at most of the major championship courses in the UK, there is either a railway line beside them or there was a railway line there in the past. And, you know, so the Prestwick, the line from Glasgow down to Ayr came past here, so we have a station next door. Our first captain of a club, the Earl of Eglinton, was a wealthy landowner, and the railway line had to cross his land. And part of the bargain that he made with the railway company when they were laying track was that he had the right to stop the train as it was crossing his land if he needed a lift somewhere. And it was ideal to get to Prestwick. So he did that. There used to be a small gate from the platform onto the first tee, and when the train was leaving Ayr, when it went past the station before Prestwick, the signalman there would press a bell which went off in the bar in our clubhouse, so that members knew they had maybe 3 or 4 minutes to go and collect their things, get out of the clubhouse and onto the platform to catch the train. So that's a new concept of drinking up time with the bell going off.
That's terrific. And that really kind of speaks to some of the character, tradition, the history of clubs that people don't always get to understand and experience. Obviously, that's a bit of a stretch now to experience that. But when they come to play, and I always feel as though people kind of miss some of the unique characteristics, the nuances of courses, and how they've kind of developed over time, including with the membership. You touched on the 12-hole aspect of the golf course when it was originally laid out. Obviously, it was extended to 18 holes. Can you offer any insight into how that kind of came to pass? The 12 holes became the old standard and 18 became the standard.
Well, I don't know that 12 was ever really the standard, but in those days it was how much ground did you have and how many holes could you get on it. I mean, Tom Morris's 12-hole course, a number of the holes crossed each other. And there's one area where about 4 or 5 holes all cross within fairly close proximity. I usually refer to it as the killing zone. If you were in there, particularly as there are a lot of blind shots coming into those, excuse me, you know, Tom Morris made the most of the land available, but the club bought more land later. I think too by the 1880s, the concept of 18 holes on a golf course had become generally accepted for most, or 9 holes and 2 nines. There are still a few 12-hole courses left, but not very many. And so the course was extended. Then we had more land available. The old 12-hole course, it was difficult to get a lot of golfers on it at the same time, just because of this killing zone where a number of holes crossed. And with more land being available, the course was extended, and Charlie Hunter, who was the sort of second professional at the club, he was heavily involved in extending it then. And so, you know, we ended up with quite a different course, but still using a number of Tom Morris's original greens, but just the sort of the actual routing of some of the holes changed. And we ended up with, we retained some of the famous holes, but we ended up with some new, very famous holes as well, all of which have tremendous names, you know, Cardinal, Himalayas, Alps.
Yes.
And in fact, our 17th hole at the moment was originally the second hole. And we think that's the oldest remaining hole in its original design that was used in the Open, because it was the second hole in the Open. It's better manicured nowadays, but it's the same hole that Tom Morris, Tommy Morris, Willie Park all played back in the 1860s.
Fabulous. Fabulous. Now, you touched on the fact that one of the things that intrigued you when you wrote down your top 3 picks to become for a secretary position was the membership and their genuine interest in people from outside. Can you speak to the Prestwick membership just now and the makeup, relatively, how many are from the local community, how many maybe as a percentages, larger community in the British Isles and international members? Because it's obviously a very diverse membership that has got a singular passion for golf and for Prestwick.
Yeah, we've got just over 600 members worldwide, of which there are probably about 320 in Scotland. I think we've got about 100, maybe about 110 who are out with the British Isles, mainly North America, but we also have quite a good Swedish contingent as well, and then people scattered around the rest of the world, in Europe, South America, Australia, South Africa. I suppose the great thing is that they all regard themselves as equals. When they come to the club, they're coming to enjoy themselves, and that's highlighted by, in our car park, we don't have reserved spaces for the captain or for the chairman or for the secretary, and it's really just everyone's equal. So you just park wherever you can find a space, and really they're coming to the club. They want to enjoy themselves. Some of them are captains of industry, but when they're here, everyone's equal. And I measure the success of someone's day at Prestwick is when they either come off the golf course or when they leave the clubhouse to go home, they've got a smile on their face. And that applies to visitors as well. They're coming here, they want to enjoy themselves and have fun. It's our job to try and make that as pain-free as possible, so they just enjoy.
And Ken, you touched on it, but one of the aspects that I know that you works and the staff works so very hard on is the whole Prestwick experience. There's other clubs around the world which are known for their lobsters or their special lunches and whatever, but the Prestwick experience certainly can stack up against any of them. And I think that because you're not a current open venue, oftentimes is overlooked, and that's at the golfer's loss. Do you want to just speak a little bit about kind of what the day looks like for that visitor when they turn up and they play at Prestwick and they enjoy lunch and how that all fits together? Because that's such an important part of the whole experience.
Yeah, well, I think we'll come on to the golf, but start with lunch. Lunch is a very important part of a day at Prestwick. We're very fortunate in that our steward, head chef David Bennett, has been with us for many years, and his father was the steward for many years before him. David is an outstanding chef, and our dining room can seat 32 people. It's one long table, and it's small enough but big enough, if that makes sense, in that you'll go in and sit with your group, but you'll get involved in conversations with people across the table or slightly along the table, and whoever's in first sits at the top of the table, and then people join on. You would never dream when you go in for lunch, if there was a group at one end of the table, of going to the other end. You join on, and that's where you find about the 2 or 3 degrees of separation. When someone says, I'm from Atlanta, oh, I know someone from Atlanta, they play at Peachtree. Who's that? He's my best friend. And next thing, there's a trip being planned to Atlanta or somewhere like that. The day at Prestwick for the Prestwick experience is, we want people to enjoy themselves the way that we think our members enjoy themselves, so that they'll come, they'll play golf in the morning, taking a caddy. Very important, we think, as part of the experience, that you actually have a caddy. We've got some excellent caddies here. They have a real fund of stories and experiences that they can pass on. whether it's caddying for presidents or whatever. You play your golf in good company on a good golf course, and then in for lunch. We ask if you're having lunch in our dining room that you wear a coat and tie. The members always do that, and you'll have a drink in the bar before you, in the smoke room before you go to lunch. You will probably be approached by some members to ask if you've enjoyed your game, where are you from, and then, you know, that's where the 2 or 3 degrees of separation kick in. You then go through for lunch. It's a 3-course lunch. We don't have fixed menus because David, our chef, really just sources what is locally available. We try and source as local as possible. He loves doing seafood. So you spoke earlier about lobster, but there's usually a couple of seafood dishes for a starter. There'll be some soups. Main course, usually a choice 4 or 5 main courses. Invariably, there'll be a spicy dish, a curry. Part of the club's history was a number of the founding fathers of the club had seen service in India, and they developed a taste for hot food. So on the tables, there are a number of different chutneys because they'd acquired a taste for chutney with their curry. So there's usually a hot dish like that, a couple of meat dishes, a couple of fish dishes, and then the cold table, which is, you know, you carve sort of roast fillet, and then traditionally the third course is cheese, and we have a rather extensive cheese table, refrigerated cheese table, normally with about 10 to 12 different types of cheese, fruit, various crackers, biscuits, whatever that you can have with it. And that's part of the experience, but the food is excellent, but often it's really the company that makes the day in the dining room, meeting other people, meeting members of the club, exchanging stories. If it's been a particularly wild day, you know, you'll get some people saying about their caddy, said, right, you know, you've got 115 yards to the hole into the wind. I want you to hit your 180-yard shot. Yep. You know, and some of these guys will dine out in those stories for years. I remember a few years ago, we had I was going to say a particularly wet spell, but we don't get rain very much in Scotland.
Yeah.
We had a wet day, and there was a group from Arizona, and they came in absolutely soaked, and they had an absolute blast. And one guy said, you know, I bought these waterproofs about 5 years ago. That's the first time I've used them. And the fact that he'd come to Scotland and got the chance to use his waterproofs, he obviously thought that was great.
Absolutely. But you know, sorry.
Well, I was going to say, once you've finished lunch, there is a bit of a tradition at Prestwick to then go through and have a kummel, which is a fairly potent liqueur. It's got cumin, cardamom, I think caraway. It's got a slightly aniseed taste, quite sweet, but it's known as putting mixture. You'll get it served in a schooner glass, filled to the brim, so that you actually get the meniscus coming over the top. The first challenge is to walk from the bar to your seat without spilling any. But if you do spill it, it doesn't matter. Just rub it in your hands, and when you go back out for your next game of golf, it'll be easier to hold on to the golf club. And I remember from my university days the effect that kummel can have on unsuspecting souls. Yes. Don't think we'll say any more about that.
But you know, it's all these small traditions, whether it's the big table at lunch or the ordering experience, that just add to the overall enjoyment. And you know, the 2 degrees of separation and the feeling of this is really special. So it's all the small touches that add up to the cumulative effect. So I commend you for everything that you and the Prestwick have done over the years to enhance that experience. So Ken, you've been exceptionally generous with your time today, but there's one last little thing I'd like to ask you about, because it really is fascinating and speaks very much to the kind of the fabric of golf and society in Scotland, I think, and proximity of great golf courses to each other. But, you know, Royal Troon and Prestwick lie kind of along the coast together. And there's a match that takes place, as I understand it, that starts at Troon and finishes at Prestwick, and then you have lunch and drinks and return. Can you kind of walk us through that? Because it's intriguing.
Yeah, you're almost right. It's the cross-country match. It's an annual match. We play normally the first Sunday in September every year between Royal Troon Golf Club and Prestwick Golf Club. I mean, the two courses almost back onto each other. There's the Pow Burn, which runs through Prestwick Golf Club, really acts as the barrier between the two clubs. There's also a caravan park right at the edge, a trailer park. But it's usually 28 or 32 a side. We play foursomes golf, great tradition of foursomes golf, alternate shots. Yep. And so in the morning, half the field will turn up at the Prestwick Clubhouse and half the field will turn up at the Royal Troon Clubhouse. So we would go out, and if it was 28 playing, then it would be 7 pairs a side at Prestwick and 7 pairs a side at Royal Troon. And if you start at Prestwick, you will play out to the 8th hole. And then instead of going to the 9th tee, you head in a different direction. It's about a 150-yard walk to the 9th fairway on Royal Troon. You cross that to the 10th tee, and you then play 9 holes in at Royal Troon. So if you're starting at Prestwick, you play a 17-hole match in the morning. And when you get in, lo and behold, all your clothes, your jacket and tie have arrived at Royal Troon. So you get changed, you go and have a very nice lunch, very convivial lunch. And then in the afternoon, you change partners, you change opponents, and you play 9 holes out in Royal Troon, and then 150 yards or so back to the 9th tee at Prestwick, and play 10 holes in. And so that's a 19-hole match. And lo and behold, all your clothes have turned up back in the Prestwick Clubhouse for you to get changed and to enjoy a refreshment after your game of golf. And if you start at Royal Troon in the morning, it's the opposite. You play 9 holes out at Troon, 10 in at Prestwick, have lunch and back. It's a very sociable match. It's a very tiring match because you're playing 36 holes of golf with, when I said it's 150 yards, it maybe only feels 150 yards in the morning, but after a good lunch in the afternoon coming back, it certainly feels a lot longer than that. I mean, everyone just enjoys it. I don't know if the background to that was many, many years ago, the great Freddie Tate undertook a bet that he could play cross-country from the clubhouse at Royal St George's to Royal Cinque Port. And in those days, you could actually play cross-country. I think the bet was he could hit a ball off the Cinque Port clubhouse in less than 40 shots. I think he achieved it with his 38th or his 39th shot. So I don't know if that gave someone an idea here in the past that it would be a good thing to try and do, is to play cross-country between the two clubs. But very popular event with both our clubs. We've got a very good relationship with the Royal Troon, who are right next to us. This is a tremendous stretch of golfing real estate in Ayrshire, and it's just a good day out.
Yes, the entire Prestwick is based upon a great day out, great golf, great company, great food, great wine, and just a lot of fellowship and camaraderie that is the core part of golf. So, Ken, it's a absolute pleasure to chat with you today. Very best wishes for Prestwick and yourself as we go through these challenging times, but these things will pass, and we'll all be back at it sooner than we know. So again, many thanks for your time.
You're very welcome.